Hello, this is David Setford, Executive Director of Tacoma Art Museum. We hope you enjoy this special presentation.
Welcome to the virtual tour of Forgotten Stories, Northwest Public Art of the 1930s. I'm Margaret Bullock, curator of the exhibition for the Tacoma Art Museum. The exhibition surveys artwork created in the Northwest on the New Deal art projects. These were projects sponsored by the federal government during the Great Depression. The Great Depression was an enormous economic downturn that occurred in the U.S. in the 1930s, and millions of people were out of work. President Franklin Roosevelt and his new administration designed a series of programs called the New Deal, which were designed to jumpstart the economy, and many of these were jobs programs. Originally, they started out primarily as public works, such as building dams or highways, but his administrators and the president himself quickly realized there were a whole host of other Americans from other walks of life who were also in need of work, and they began to expand the jobs programs. Within his administration and his own house, his wife Eleanor Roosevelt, there were advocates for the arts and adding them to these programs. And that was not just the visual arts, but included dance, music, theater, writers, and etc. So under the New Deal, there were 4 projects launched specifically for the visual arts, and that's what I'm surveying in this exhibition, the work created on those projects in the Northwest. We're showing you images from each of those projects as I give you a short overview of each. The first was called the Public Works of Art Project, and it ran from December of 1933 until the beginning of May in 1934. It was very short, and it was really meant as a test project for whether this could work. And they used a variety of strategies to just get money into the hands of artists as quickly as possible. In some instances, government representatives simply went and bought a finished work from an artist. In others, they gave them a commission for new work, or perhaps they incorporated them in another project in some way, adding an artistic element to it, like having them design signs for a new highway that was being constructed. Whatever work was gathered became the property of the federal government and was allocated to tax-supported institutions of all kinds or went into government offices. The PWAP was such a success that the government immediately decided to launch 2 additional arts projects. These were both pretty close in purpose and eventually were merged together. One was called the Treasury Relief Art Project, and the other was called the Section of Fine Arts, one in the fall of 1934 and the other early in 1935. And they were both specifically for the decoration of public buildings, particularly new construction such as courthouses and post offices that were going up under the New Deal projects. Most of these works were large-scale and meant to be fairly permanently located, so they are the murals and the sculptures that you may be familiar with from having visited government buildings of various kinds. There are some other smaller, what they called portable works, which are your framed canvases, prints, and other smaller pieces, but the large-scale works are the most common for these projects. We'll talk about this project a little bit later, but these were also the ones that had the most government oversight and control of the look and the subjects of the works that were created. And then finally, the largest and best known of the projects was the Federal Art Project, which ran from 1935 until early 1943, though most of the activity was over by the middle of 1942. And it was an enormous project, and it was a sprawling project, and it was run under the Works Progress Administration, or the WPA. And it's become common now to just sort of pile all these projects together for simplicity's sake and call it all WPA art or New Deal art. But it is the Federal Art Project that was specifically running under the WPA. It was enormous. It took place across the United States, and there was a whole variety of work created under these projects. Anything that could get artists back to work and keep them preserving their skills and contributing to the national culture. We know that across the country, thousands of artists were employed, hundreds of thousands of artworks were created. Now, in the Northwest, for a long time, we really didn't think there was much going on in the 4 states that were considered the Northwest region. And that was because there were only fragments left, both just a few artworks and a few bits and pieces of the records. And that is because the art projects were ticking along beautifully in the 1930s until until 1941 in the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And at that point in time, of course, the U.S. decided to enter World War II, and all the federal government's attention and money was diverted to support the war effort. And at that point in time, the art projects were ended, often literally overnight, and there was really no organization in place to help preserve the records or find permanent homes for the artworks. So many things were lost in that moment in time, and particularly out here in the Northwest. So the impact here was really thought to be pretty small, but recent research has been revealing the fact that actually the projects in the Northwest were really extensive. They had a large impact in the region and even contributed to some larger national trends and stories. We know now that there were over 600 artists employed and several thousand artworks created, and the lists get longer every day as new things are found. So we'll talk about bits and pieces of these projects as we go. It was an enormous project. They were complex and complicated, and it's hard to cover in any detail in a short tour, so we'll be doing an overview. If you're interested in more, there are a number of great books that have been written out there about these various projects, and we also created a book to go along with this exhibition called New Deal Art in the Northwest, the WPA and Beyond, which is available either through the museum store or through the University of Washington Press.
Thank you for watching this special presentation from Tacoma Art Museum. To learn more about the museum or learn about our membership program, please check our website.